Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and be talking about all the things. When we were brainstorming ideas for what to talk about, this had just popped up. I kept seeing a hashtag for hashtag all the things. And I realized even more so the level of all the things that DSPs you guys are dealing with given the COVID in normal world. Now, given COVID, and it's a whole nother level of hashtag all the things. So we did a survey asking people, what are all the things outside of COVID times? What are all the things you're dealing with now? And so we throw things in. This is kind of how all the things are happening at us. They're all attacking us from all different directions. And so these are the different things. Some of the things that you guys answered were part of what you were dealing with when it comes to all the things. And so part of the problem is, we have all the things. And there are really two reasons why I think we get so caught up and really have a hard time managing our stress, which is what we're really talking about today. And the first thing is, we all know how to manage stress. And that means we know we need to take deep breaths. We know we need to get outside and move our bodies. We know we need to drink water. I watched the morning presentation where she went through all the how to get hydrated. We know this stuff, but we don't choose to do it. We don't choose to give ourselves this. Instead, we keep plowing forward, soldiering on. I got to get more done. I got to check more off the list. And we don't put ourselves first. Something I talk a lot about in my private practice is the idea of self-loyalty. And people who are caregivers, by genuine definition, have a lot of loyalty to others. We love to give to other people. To the detriment of ourselves, we will do this. So I encourage my clients to really be working with, how can I show up for myself? And we've all heard the phrase, put your face mask on, which has even more meaning these days. Put your oxygen mask on first, and then put it on the one you love. We've heard that phrase so many times that it's kind of lost all meaning to us. We don't really know what that really means. But what that really means is you have to take care of yourself first, and then you can be a better service to others. We know how to do the manage of the stress. What we have is a glorification of busy in our culture. Busy has become the new fine. How are you doing? I'm so busy. Oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. I can't keep it straight. Everything's coming at me. It's so much. And we have this whole definition of stress, keep going. It's kind of the culture that we live in. Even more so now with COVID, I think we're very much into this, life is so hard and I'm just going to keep plowing forward. And so it isn't so much it is that problem is the problem, but it's the stories we tell ourselves around the stress. So we tell ourselves messages which are not self-loyal. This is how it's supposed to be. Grin and bear it. I'm just going to power through. I get more done the more stressed I am. That's one of my personal favorites. I just absolutely thrive on that message. I just ask my husband. If I did it right, I would be less stressed. And this is for those perfectionists out there who are really obsessed with getting it right. If I can do it right, we believe, we won't be stressed, which is a false belief that keeps us pushing forward, because there is no perfect. There is no right. One of my other favorites, I should be grateful. We say I should be grateful, and I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit, but it pulls us out of what's really going on. As you heard just a few minutes ago, they talked about the power of mourning the child you thought you were going to have first. And then, after you've done that, then you're grateful for everything else that happens. But we miss that first step. We miss the acknowledging of the stress. We miss the mourning what's really going on. We miss really in our bones feeling that grief and sadness for the life we used to live, which we can all relate to during COVID. Then, once we've done that, we can be grateful. We can be grateful all we want to. But if we don't honor what's really going on, we just whitewash everything with this gratitude, we just keep plowing forward in stress. And then another personal favorite, I'll be better when. I'll be better when I get a new job. I'll be better when I get a different husband. I'll be better when we can go on vacation. I'll be better when COVID's over. We just keep pushing out the deadline. And for me, it was only when I started realizing this is life right here. This is it. It's not going to get better some other time or someplace else. It's just going to get different. And so we need to figure out how to do life right now, because it's not going to be any different when we get there. So the second factor, and the main one I'm going to be talking about today, is how we talk to ourselves. And I have found that this is the one thing we can control. We can't control all the things. All the things, they're happening to us and at us and for us. We need to be able to navigate all the things in a different way. So I want to introduce you. I have 3 different characters I want to introduce you to. This first character is the monger, your inner bully. We're very familiar with this inner bully. The inner bully is the voice in our heads that's constantly telling us where we dropped the ball, what we could do differently, how we could improve. It's so hard. What are we doing? And so I took some of the messages that people had shared in with all the things, and I turned them around to be monger messages. Now, as you can see, these monger messages, they're pretty mean. And sometimes when I first started presenting on this stuff, I used to struggle with how mean I had to say these messages because they were so mean. But in reality, this is how we talk to ourselves. So a lot of people talked about, doing, making sure that the person they were caring for was wearing their mask, and they were constantly pulling their mask off. And so the monger message is going to be, gosh, you're such a nag about the mask. Can you just let it go? What's your problem? The monger message is going to be, you're doing it wrong. You need to lift correctly. Why are you doing it wrong? The monger message is going to be, everyone is dealing with grief. Get over yourself. What's the big deal? The monger message is going to be, so what stimulating activity are you going to do today? What great thing are we going to get done today? She's going to be, you're a terrible mom. Your kids are home alone again. All of these messages are mean and brutal. And if we said them to anyone in our relationship world, they would look at us like we were the meanest person in the world. Yet, this is how we talk to ourselves all the freaking time. When you start paying attention to how your monger speaks to you, this isn't that harsh. She probably could be a lot harsher. I know mine is. Like my husband likes to call her the little demon that lives inside of me, because she is so mean and cruel. So on top of having all the things, we're compounding that tenfold with how we talk to ourselves. We're making that 1,000 times harder by having this mean inner critic in our heads. So we've all heard this, and people can ask questions, yes, on the Facebook. So if I did want to throw that up, if there's anything I'm saying that you have pushback on or questions on, please let us know, and then I can answer that. Oh my gosh, my whole professional life is devoted to helping people practice this. This is the problem with all of this stuff. Anyone in my profession, something I rail against, is we do a lot of lip service to this conversation, but really practicing it in our bones, really getting it in our heads is a whole nother level. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out, because that is so freaking true. Okay, so this is the monger. Sometimes it's hard to know when your monger is in charge, because she's such a familiar voice. I was going to say comfortable, but she's not comfortable. She's familiar. We're used to that voice. That is kind of the voice that's always there. I think of years ago, I did a presentation, and a friend of mine happened to be there, and she came up to me afterward, and she was like, it was a presentation about mongers. And she was like, that was a great presentation. I got so much out of it. Thank you. The usual sentiment. And then she said, as only a friend can say to you, I'm not implementing any of the stuff you suggested, though, because I need that monger. I need that voice, or I'm not going to get anything done. Like, if I don't have the voice telling me that I'm doing it wrong, I'll just sit around all day and watch Netflix and eat bonbons, And I was like, yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agreed with her. That was how I was living my life too, that I was preaching about the dangers of the inner critic and the monger, but I believed her message, and I believed I needed her shaming and belittling, or I wasn't going to get anything done. So that's what I'm challenging you today, to be honest with yourself on how much this monger is talking, and how much you believe you need her message, although you hate her message. But we have this secret love affair with this monger voice. So it's hard to notice when she's talking because we're so familiar with her. So one of the ways, here are some behaviors that we engage in that we can catch to know that our monger is talking. One of my favorites is numbing and overindulging. So you are at work all day long and you have all the things, and your monger has been chatting in your ear all day long. So when you come home, you're like, I'm done. I'm over. I'm done. So I'm going to get a bag of chips. I'm going to get a pint of ice cream, and I'm going to get a bottle of wine, and I'm going to sit on the couch, and I'm going to numb out with the TV, and I'm going to play a game on my phone all at the same time. That is numbing and overindulging. That is, let me take any stimulus that gets me thinking away from the radar, and I'm just going to sit here and numb out. And we do that usually when our mongers have been talking at us too long. So this is a sign, if you are engaging in this pattern. I know for me, if I am sitting on the couch with my game, watching TV and a glass of wine, it's kind of a red flag that something's going on with my monger. Even the other day, my husband said to me, honey, you have 3 devices going. I had my game, I had the TV, and I was listening to something on my phone. That's the ultimate in overindulging and numbing. And I didn't even notice it until he pointed it out to me that I had 3 devices going. Like, that's how we get stuck on this thing. The next one I want to talk about is having a 10 reaction to a 2 situation. So we will go all day. We're really stressed out. It's been an exhausting day, but we're grateful and we're happy and everything's fine and I'm doing okay. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to get that bottle of wine and I just can't wait to walk in the door. And we walk in the door and we look in the sink and our son has not done the dishes that we asked him to do that morning. And what do? We unload on him. That is a ginormous problem. It is as if he has screamed from the rooftops that we are a terrible parent. Like, it is a 10 reaction, World War III in the kitchen. When in reality, that's kind of a 2, maybe a 4 problem. It's not a 10. But we have these overreactions because we are so stressed and we are beating ourselves up so much that we way overreact. So when you have an overreaction, it's usually a sign your monger's been talking. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because I'm going to run out of time. But the one that I wanted to touch on was, I should feel. We will tell ourselves, this is a mantra I used to have, I should feel happy. I should feel grateful. I should feel blessed. I should feel, fill in whatever the blank is. Anytime you hear yourself saying, I should feel, is a sign for you to say, what do I feel? What do I feel right now? Because I'm sure it isn't what you should be feeling. And when we pretend that we don't acknowledge what it is we're really feeling, we just pretend that we're okay, but I should be feeling this. That means our monger is talking. She's telling us you would be a better person if you felt differently. You would be a better person if you were happy. You would be a better person if you were grateful. But in reality, until we really acknowledge where we are, we can't feel better. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. Any questions or anything? Okay. So there are some myths of the monger that I want to touch on briefly. She kind of keeps us stuck in this. You know, I talked about the bottom one, the myth we need the monger. You know, if I beat myself up, if I don't beat myself up, I won't accomplish anything. She's also a big fan of worry and vigilance. So if I worry, then I'm doing something. You know, she'll convince you, at least you're doing something, you're worrying, you're stressed about it. You know, it doesn't do anything. I'm not making it any better by worrying, but I'm going to worry. You know, just before this started, someone had gone to get me lunch, and it took a while because it's traffic time, et cetera, et cetera. And Bethany comes up to me and she's like, I'm so sorry, I'm going to call you out here, Bethany. Bethany's like, I'm just so anxious because, you know, they need to bring your lunch. They need to bring your lunch. And I could see her. She was sitting in front of me. She kept checking the clock. She'd go back. She'd check the clock. She'd go back. And I was like, girl, I can eat fast. Like, this is not going to be a problem. It is no big deal. Like, you'll be amazed how quickly I can shove a sandwich in my mouth. And then as soon as they came with my lunch, she just was like, okay. Whew. You could just see her physically relax. She was doing nothing. She was worrying. There was nothing she could do. Someone else was getting the lunch. It was either going to happen or it wasn't going to happen. They were either going to get here on time or they weren't. But that idea of let me worry, let me get my anxiety up is a common phenomenon. Now, I don't know this, but I would venture to guess that Bethany's pretty stressed and probably has a really loud monger today. So it is a safe place to put her anxiety on the fact of whether I'm going to get lunch or not. Because that doesn't matter. Who really cares if I get lunch or not? But that is a really safe place for me to put my anxiety. So I'm going to stress about something insignificant and small so I can feel better. And that is where I'm going to put my energy rather than on what's really going on. So just paying attention to those patterns you have, I call them default patterns. We have default patterns that we engage in when we're stressed. One of them is we might have a 10 reaction to a 2 situation. One of them is we might numb and overindulge. One of them is we pick really benign things to worry about and we stress and stress and stress. When you notice your default pattern, that usually means your monger's chatting. Another one that we really get involved with, especially in social media, and now that a lot of people are just on their phones a lot more with COVID because we're not interacting with actual real people, we get involved in this comparison myth. So we get online and we look at what other people are doing and we're like, they have it all figured out. They totally know what's going on. And so I want to remind you that everyone you see has a monger. Everyone you see is beating themselves up inside. Whether they appear to be super confident or super on top of it, they still have this voice in there telling them how terrible they are. It levels the playing field when you recognize they have a monger too. And they are acting out of their monger most of the time, as are we. So knowing that can really be helpful in reducing stress. Okay, now I want to go to the second character. We're very familiar with the monger. We've heard work on inner critic. That isn't a new character. But where I kept getting stuck when I was teaching people about this work is this voice of false self-compassion. I call her the BFF. And I call her the BFF because I think about being in high school and I had a BFF and she was always up for anything. I have a BFF now, actually. She's one of my best friends, and she is always up for anything. She will go and do anything that I want to do. And she always thinks whatever I do is absolutely amazing, even when it's not. She thinks it's absolutely amazing. And so noticing this voice is really important because the BFF gets us in trouble a lot. And here are some ways the BFF shows up in the all the things messages. The BFF loves to overindulge. She loves the idea of you deserve something. And she loves to blame other people in your defense. So she's going to say, there's never enough PPE. Is it PPE? Did I say that? Okay. There's never enough PPE. That magical they, keep wasting it. So the BFF loves to talk in big black and white, right and wrong, and she loves to blame other people. Today was awful. I deserve another glass of wine. I wish people would stop talking. I'm so done with people needing something from me. I'm supposed to be entertaining, keep PPE stocked, and stay on budget all at the same time? And then I saw on Facebook, my coworker, they were at a family gathering this weekend. They are so selfish. They're going to get everyone sick. And so what we do is our monger is talking and telling us how terrible we are and how we need to get our stuff together. And we jump over to the complete other side to feel better. We jump over here to the BFF. And the BFF is like, it's okay. It's not your fault. It's them. They're the ones that did it. If it wasn't for them, you'd be fine. And so we get stuck in this land of false self-compassion. So we go online, we see that our coworker was at a party, we come back to work and we grab another coworker and we're like, can you believe it? Can you believe she was at this party? And we get all this drama going and we're all excited about this Facebook. Is anyone going to talk to the coworker that was at the party? No. Is anyone going to take any action that this happened? No. We're just going to sit and get ourselves all stressed out in this area of drama. And this is what we do all day long. We bounce back and forth between the monger telling us how terrible we are and beating us down. And then we get some relief by jumping over here to get some drama and get some relief from it. And we might enjoy then going home and overindulging and numbing as a way to smooth that out. So this dynamic, I call this the dance. Maybe. There we go. The stress dance. It's the dance of the monger and the BFF. And this is where I think we get stuck a lot. Is we believe, the monger believes the only way to success is through perfection. She's mean, she's nasty, she's unrelenting. And then we have to relieve that pressure someplace. So we go clear over to the other side. We go to the BFF, who she's fun. And she tells us we deserve good things. And she's really excited for us. And she causes a lot of drama. She causes a lot of pettiness. She causes a lot of conflict. She gets us into trouble. I will say, I wrote, this is all this information is in a book I wrote called The Happier Approach. And when I first wrote the book a few years ago, I wrote the book because my dad had just died earlier that year. And he was consumed by a monger. His monger ran his life. And I noticed that my monger was running my life too. And I was like, this can't keep going. Like, we can't continue this pattern over and over and over again. So it became kind of my mission to be helping people figure out this mean, unrelenting voice. Because here is my dad at 78, a major success by my definition as his daughter. He had raised 3 wonderful kids. He started his own business. He was married to my mom for over 50 years. And he still thought he was a failure. He still could name the things he didn't do right or the successes he didn't have. He died with the voice of his monger running the show. And so when I started diving into learning more about mongers and how to help the inner critic, everyone said to yourself, be kind to yourself. Accept yourself no matter what. That's the common advice. You have this loud inner critic, you need to be kind to yourself no matter what. And I, who actually believed I needed the monger to get anything done, was like, what does that mean to be accept myself no matter what? If I accept myself no matter what, then I'm never going to get anything done. Because in my mind, accepting myself no matter what was the BFF. And I knew when I leaned on that voice of false self-compassion, I did end up sitting on the couch eating bonbons and not doing anything. Because I was so overwhelmed by the voice of this monger. So noticing this dance is really the key to reducing your stress. Any questions? Yeah, which is why I think this work is even more important, because the idea that you are in charge of all these things, again, all the things, and you are really good, a gift of a DSP is vigilance, is being able to see the world and see what needs to be done. I think that it is human nature. I think it's a survival skill. I think studies have shown that it was put in there biologically so that we would be, it used to be tigers and bears that were chasing us and we needed to know how to take action. And now we've kind of turned it on ourselves. I do know that there are people, when I did a book tour for my book, The Happier Approach. And as I said, my voice is like a demon. And I believe everyone has a monger. I believe some people's mongers are way louder than other people's mongers. And so a lot of times I talk about my background is in anxiety, and this is where anxiety comes from, this dancing back and forth, because you're never really dealing with what's happening. You're just dancing in this anxiety mode. Did that answer your question? So he said, is it possible in an organization or in a home where you are that the monger BFF dance becomes a ginormous, you're triggering each other's mongers and BFFs all over the place, and it becomes a ginormous anxiety fest as you're trying to do all the things and these voices are talking. Did I say it correct? Yes, absolutely. That is why I have figured out, totally agree. So the idea then that what we have come to find as a culture is, okay, so we need to be venting. We need to be letting out the stress. And when we let out the stress, this is what I said happened. In that example of, I see on Facebook that my coworker was at a party, and then I come into work and I'm really mad at the coworker. And so what do? I'm yelling at my other coworker and saying, can you believe this is happening? But I'm venting. I'm just releasing my stress and my anxiety. But what is happening is you're just circling around and around and around, and you're just doing the dance over and over. I'm going to answer that question as I keep moving forward. But that is a great question, and that is why I'm in the process of writing a second book, which is about the BFF, because I left in the first book, I talk about her, but not as much as I see her play out. And I think she is just as dangerous as the inner critic monger voice, because she just is sabotaging things all over the freaking place. And we think it's okay because she's the voice of self-compassion. That would be false self-compassion, though. Is the third voice, and you can click it one more forward, is the voice of the biggest fan. The voice of the biggest fan is the one in the middle. So we jump from inner critic beating us up, and we go over here to drama, 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 and then we have the biggest fan. And the biggest fan is that voice of kindness and wisdom. She is the ideal place we want to be. Now, here's what I got to say about the biggest fan. Notice I said the word ideal place we want to be. This does not mean we live in the voice of the biggest fan. It does not mean that the goal is to get there all the time and just be talking from the place of the biggest fan. I do this work for a living. I do not live in the land of the biggest fan. My goal is to recognize when I'm engaged in the dance and ask myself, what would my biggest fan say here? And I'm going to do a lot of examples to help you bring up that voice. And I actually have a methodology for how to do that. But your biggest fan, her first thing she's going to do is she's going to acknowledge what's really going on. She's going to say, this is freaking hard. This might be the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I'm just going to piece it together most of the time. And that's the best I have right now. And that's okay. She's going to say, okay, before you go in the house to feed the kids, let's check in. You got this. This is so hard. Take some deep breaths, 1 minute at a time. She's going to say, it's so hard, but I love my job. And seeing her smile today, that's what makes it worth it. She's going to say, you're not a freaking machine. It's okay to be tired and overwhelmed. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. One of the ways I will get in touch with my biggest fan, in addition to the stuff I'm going to teach you, is I noticed when I would go to the bathroom, and this was pre-COVID, I had this realization now that when we go to the bathroom, we come out and we wash our hands like crazy people. We come out, I'm washing my hands for 20 seconds, and I wouldn't look up in the mirror. I would just be washing my hands. And then I might look in the mirror and do a little fluff or whatever, and then I'd walk out and be on with my day because I have stuff to do. I can't be like primping in the mirror here. But what I realized is when I looked up into the mirror and I looked at myself and I said, how's it going? How are you doing today? And I just had that brief check-in with myself. Everything in my body went, whew. And it was like, oh yeah, you're a freaking person. You have a whole body here. You have a heart and a stomach and a soul and legs. You're not just this machine that's running up in your head. We get so caught up in all the things that we forget that we are actually human beings. And so I'll look in the mirror, I'll actually put my hands over my heart, and I'll say, and I have it that my biggest fan calls me Sweet Pea. So in my mind, I will say, okay, Sweet Pea, what's really going on today? And I will acknowledge, I'm really struggling today. This is hard. I am so sad. I don't know what to do next. I don't know that I can keep going. And there's a difference when we talked about venting. When you are engaged in venting, you're doing this. It's so hard. I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh my gosh, it's so terrible. This is awful. This is just crazy. I got to cook the dinner for the kids, and I got to do this, and then I got to do paperwork, and blah, blah, blah. Your energy is really high and really manic. That's venting. Really checking in with yourself is grounded. It's genuine. It's authentic. It's saying, oh, this sucks. I'm struggling. And we can give ourselves some kindness around that rather than engaging in this energy up here. And that will take some time for you to start to get the difference between. Because when we're so comfortable with the venting, we think this is where I'm venting, I'm being productive, I'm getting stuff done. And what is helpful, what I love about this framework is in your organization, It allows you to check each other. It allows you to say, okay, sweet pea, what's really going on here? Or where's your monger, where's your BFF? And gets you an ability to kind of check in and see what's really going on. Question. So I think it's always helpful to get permission. So we don't want to be walking around saying to people, well, there's your monger, there's your BFF, there's your, we want to be able to talk to our coworkers and say, hey, I heard this really cool thing. This is how it works. Would you be okay if we started talking about that? And so to get permission first, because what happens a lot is we are really good, and anytime you do a personality assessment, if you've ever done one like Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram, you're really good at saying, you're an INFJ, you're a 9, you're a 2, and we start labeling people. And what happens in reality is the more you know about those personality assessments, the harder it is to label people, because people aren't easily labeled. So when we learn these new things, we have a tendency, and I'm so guilty of this, of being a little superior. I learned this new thing. I know all about mongers and biggest fans and BFFs. And so I'm going to teach all of you people how to do it. Instead of coming in at it with, hey, let's do this together. Let's figure this out together. I want to bring in the monger and the BFF into this and see how it's playing out here and see if we can start labeling it, because it's really causing a lot of anxiety and stress in our organization because we're all jumping back and forth between mongers and BFFs. So what is really helpful to do when someone comes to you and they're venting, so back to that Facebook example I gave, is to simply say, how did that make you feel when you saw that on Facebook? And the person's going to respond with, well, I can't believe it. They did. We're going to be back up into the venting. And so then it's going to be, you need to get into your body. Let's slow down. Let's get into our bodies. And then let's kind of think this through. How do you feel? Well, I feel betrayed. I'm really trying here to I haven't been able to go to my mom's house. I haven't been able to see my new nephew. All these things are happening because I'm really sticking with COVID restrictions. And so I feel betrayed that this person is taking my life at risk by going to this party. Yeah, you should feel betrayed. That's okay. You see, now there I went with the I should feel. But you can feel betrayed. That's what's coming up for you. So then you deal with the betrayed. That you're not going to feel better by just complaining about the fact that the person went to the party. You're only going to feel better when we can deal with what's really going on. And that's what's really are the emotions. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through this 3-step system. I call it ASK. And this is how you hear from your biggest fan. I will say to myself, I'm going to ask to hear from my biggest fan. So I notice the dance happening between the monger and the BFF. And then I think, okay, how can I hear from my biggest fan? So I acknowledge what I'm feeling. This is what I just said when we came to the Facebook example. And I said, so you're going to say to someone, how are you feeling about this? Now, what happens is you say, I'm feeling betrayed, even if that comes up for you. And then immediately what is going to rush into your brain is, you shouldn't feel betrayed. Who are you to feel betrayed? That's silly that you feel betrayed. I mean, come on, could you be more dramatic? Betrayed, really? And you're going to have all this inner commentary about how it is you're feeling and whether it's right or wrong. So the goal is to just acknowledge the feeling. We're not going to be judging the feeling. We're not going to figure out where the feeling came from. Is it appropriate? Why I'm feeling this way? You're just going to, off the top of your head, name how you're feeling. And so we have learned culturally that we are better people, we are stronger people if we don't acknowledge anything that isn't pleasant. If we're only grateful and positive and happy. And so if we start talking about words like betrayed, that's really like, whew, that's getting heavy there. We don't want to go there. We want to stay up here in the light and airy spot. And the idea is, until you can acknowledge what's really going on, until you can acknowledge that feeling, you're gonna not be able to drop down and get into that biggest fan. I have to say, I'm a therapist by training. I think I went into therapy so that I could figure out how to stop having feelings. I spent most of my early years intellectualizing all my feelings. So I was so bummed. I can't even tell you how bummed I was when I realized that this was a key step to unhooking that anxiety dance. This is a really important part of getting out of that pattern, because acknowledging what you're feeling is the first step in building self-loyalty. It's the first step in having curiosity about what's really going on. Because when we're engaged in the dance up here, we're not acknowledging ourselves. We're pretending, we're performing. We're staying out of what's really going on. And the only way to get into your biggest fan mode is to really give yourself some permission. If I'm having a feeling, then I'm having a feeling. That's what's happening. Now, one quick caveat. This is where we go amok with this. Having a feeling does not give you permission to act on the feeling. So I'm feeling betrayed. And then common cultural wisdom is, well, then you need to confront her. You need to confront the person that went to the party. You need to have a conversation with them and tell them how betrayed you are. Well, I'm not saying you need to always take an action on the feeling. I'm saying we are simply acknowledging what the feelings are. We'll get into the action in a little bit. But where we go wrong is we immediately have a feeling and then we jump into action instead of just being like, this is just a feeling. It's a benign feeling. Studies have shown that it takes 90 seconds when you feel a feeling, when you have a feeling, whether you're aware of it or not, it takes 90 seconds to biologically run through your body. So I see something on the floor, my brain says it's a snake. I feel fear immediately. Before my brain could figure out, is it a snake? Is it a cord? What's really going on? I immediately feel fear. And so 90 seconds, that courses through my body. If I pretend that I'm not feeling any fear, I don't feel anything, it's still coursing through my body. It's still going through. It's 90 seconds. It has to happen. But what I notice with a lot of my clients that have this anxiety is we push down that feeling. That's not appropriate. I shouldn't be feeling that way. We justify it away. And then when we get home, we have the 10 reaction to the 2 situation. Then we unload everything on our loved ones because they're safe. So I'll come home, I'll see the Facebook post, and I will unload on my poor husband about the fact that so-and-so went to a party and blah, 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 rather than really acknowledging how it's making me feel. Okay. The next step, oh, I'm sorry, before I get on the next step, this is a list of feelings. The reason I put a list of feelings up there is, and you can Google feelings, like just type in, give me a list of feelings, and there will be 50 bajillion lists of feelings. This is so helpful when you are first getting in contact with what it is you're feeling, because we don't really know what it is we're feeling. We don't really have words to it. And so this allows us to be like, and I'll have my clients start with happy, sad, angry, afraid, just those top level feelings. And then they drop down into the other labels. Now, there's a big difference between feeling excited and elated and overjoyed and just feeling relief. Those are all in the happy column. But feeling that level, but to recognize that every time I feel a feeling, it doesn't have to be so high energy. I can be really happy and just be relieved, but I can be happy. So noticing where your feelings also fall on that. When we're new at acknowledging our feelings, we tend to only notice the ones that are in high. So I encourage you to really be challenging yourself to be able to label some feelings. As you're getting used to this concept as well, it also is helpful to name like 10. You can be feeling a bunch of stuff that's all over the board. That's okay. The more you can acknowledge what's really going on, the better. Okay, the next slide after feelings. After acknowledging your feelings, you're going to slow down and get into your body. This is also another one that I was really bummed that was in the research as to what you need to do. Because again, I want to keep doing things. I want to stay in my head. I don't want to slow down and get into my body. I got stuff to do, all the things. We got to keep going. And slowing down just slows me down and I get less done. That was my thinking. But this has been a game changer. Slow down and get into your body. I'm not saying you need to go for a 30-minute bike ride or walk around the block. I'm saying 10 to 20 seconds. And it's more than just taking a deep breath. because that's a common one we'll hear. Slow down and take a deep breath. And so what do? I'm not feeling any better. No, you're not really breathing. You're just going through the motions of moving your arms up and down. Really what I want you to do is a full body movement. Full body movement. So I'm going to make everyone here stand up. And you're going to do a full body movement. You're going to move your arms or touch your toes or reach for the sky or just wiggle your body. This is a way to remind yourself, oh yeah, I got a body. I'm not just in my head. I have a whole body. Okay, you can all sit down. Does anyone here feel worse after standing up? No, there are no, for all you at home, no one's feeling worse. This will automatically make you feel better. 10, 20 seconds, stand up. But I encourage you to full body movement it, because that's really what gets you out of your head and into your body, because that's the whole point of this. So you have acknowledged what you were feeling. You have labeled the fact that you're feeling betrayed by the Facebook. We're going to use that example. You're going to slow down and get into your body. So as you're standing there with your coworker and you're going on and on about this awful person that was at the party, your coworker is going to say, what are you feeling right now? And you're going to say, I'm feeling betrayed, after a bunch of other feelings. And then they're going to say, okay, let's get into our body. Let's slow down and get into our body. And you're going to do some type of full body movement. Okay, and then the next slide is the last step. And this is K. Kindly pull back and see the big picture. What our Monger and our BFF do in that dance is they keep us stuck in black and white thinking. There's a right way and a wrong way. There's a good person and a bad person. They lost all the PPE. It's the governor's fault for closing everything down. It's my boss's fault for making me stay here. We get into this blame game where everything is black and white. And so kindly pull back to see the big picture is challenging yourself to brainstorm other options. It's challenging yourself to think of the coworker that went to the party and think about, why did they do that? What are some other reasons they did that other than that they personally wanted to expose me to COVID? Maybe because it was their grandfather's 80th birthday and he was sick and they didn't know how much longer he was going to live. Maybe they were super cautious the whole time, and the one picture that someone took was the one time that they all gathered together to get the last family photo. Maybe they are super selfish and they were just done with COVID and they wanted to go out to a party and just let loose. And so they just wanted to do that. And so then now what are you going to do if that's the case? Sitting around and talking to your friend, your coworker, and making a big deal about it and venting doesn't make the problem go away. It doesn't even make you feel better. All it does is bring in a bunch of anxiety. So when you can kindly pull back and see the big picture, you can come up with potential other ideas. And then you can say, okay, this isn't the end of the world. This isn't black and white. This has a lot of gray to it. How can I what next action do I want to take? Do I want to sit down with a coworker and have a conversation with them? Do I want to escalate it and take it to my supervisor because this is the third time I've seen them do that? Do I want to pretend that it's not happening and unfollow them on Facebook? There are lots of variety of options. And even in okay, I'm going to have a conversation with my coworker. Okay, are you going to do that in an office? Are you going to go for a walk? Are you going to ask them to meet? Are you going to be confrontational? Lots of options. So this K step allows us to see that there are a lot of different ways to do it. One of the words that I use a lot is and. I don't want to do this, and it needs to get done. I'll do that a lot with myself when I'm procrastinating on something. And I notice that I'm on, social media, or I'm making the rounds on the internet. And then I think, I just don't want to do this. Okay, and it needs to get done. So stuff needs to happen. And that's the power of the biggest fan, is she's not always, yay, you. She is not always do whatever you want. She is, this is hard and we got to keep going. She's acknowledging what really is, that voice of kindness and wisdom. She's grounded, she's genuine, she's authentic. She's coming from a place of, I want to be, and I am a really good person. I just get messed up sometimes because I'm a human being. She's forgiving. She recognizes you make mistakes. And so that's a big part of this work as well, is recognizing we get so caught up in not wanting the wrath of the monger and wanting to feel good with the BFF that we forget to own that I did that wrong. I made a mistake there. And that may be what happens when you talk to the coworker who went to the party, that they may be like, yeah, I was just done. And I couldn't stand it one more second. And so at the last minute, I decided to go to this party and I messed up. And that immediately takes down the drama of, oh my gosh, how could you have done that? Because they're owning it. When you own that you've made a mistake, when you own that you've done it wrong, then you need to be like, what can I do to make this better? Because another common cultural thing is to say, well, I made a mistake, so, shoot me. Stuff happens, I made a mistake. No, when you made a mistake, now we got to figure out, how can we make amends? How can we do it differently next time so this doesn't happen again? And that's the idea of the biggest fan. Any questions? Okay. I will do that at the end. Okay, so the next slide, I think I walk through an example, and I'll do that relatively quickly. Oh no, I'm sorry, got out of order. So I want to talk about kindness and gratitude, and I touched on this already earlier on, but I do think this bears repeating, because a lot of us in the caregiving industry, we absolutely love the idea of gratitude and positive thinking. It is one of the things that keeps us moving forward. It's it's the top principle for 13 Messages from Milo. It is so important to be gratitude and positive thinking. And we need to be cautious that we aren't using gratitude and positive thinking as a way to keep us out of what's really going on in the world, as a way to pull ourselves out of it. We need to be able to say, okay, this is hard, and I'm grateful for this, 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 and this. But that gratitude doesn't take away from how hard it is. So the message around be positive and be grateful has been, which I think is dangerous, of you can feel better if you're just grateful and positive. But what we miss is the actual acknowledging of what's really going on, acknowledging the pain. So kindness allows us to be honest with ourselves about what is happening and then feel it, to honor. This is really hard, and I'm really grateful that I have a job, and I love it when my client smiles. That just fills me up with so much joy. But that does not take away from the fact that this is really hard. Okay, so let's walk through a scenario. We talked about the Facebook one, but this is a different one. You pull up to your home at the end of a long day. You're exhausted, yet, life goes on, all the things. You still need to help your kids get dinner ready and deal with the stack of laundry that's there. So the reaction of your monger is going to be, well, there's no rest for the weary, the monger says. People have it so much worse than you. That's a favorite line of the monger, loving to point out how other people have it so much worse than you. So you need to be grateful. You have a warm home to go into, and you have your health. You already yelled at your kids this morning. They deserve a happy parent, not this exhausted, angry one they have been seeing recently. So that voice, as you're sitting there as you pull up to your house, and that voice is sitting there, as you're sitting there in your car, that doesn't make you feel good. That's not a positive way to enter into the home. But that's how a lot of us enter in. More beaten down. We're doing a worse job. This is so terrible. I'm such a loser. If I were a different person or a machine, I could do this differently. Okay, so then the next slide is going to be what your BFF is going to say. And she says, this is the false self-compassion. You're exhausted, and your spouse, well, he hasn't been helping at all. How hard is it to do some laundry? And why does dinner always fall on you? Forget the laundry. It can wait another day. Just make it through dinner. Thank God for leftovers, and then you can chill out to a glass or 3 of wine and the rest of the cookie dough ice cream. Again, that voice also playing there as you're sitting in the car, it makes you feel better for a moment. You're like, yeah, I just got to survive. Just got to get through, just got to keep plowing ahead. I'm just going to get through. I'm going to yell at my husband because he's so lazy. And then I'm going to, keep going with the ice cream and the wine, and I'll just go to bed. Nothing has improved in your life. You're still kind of miserable, but now your husband's gotten yelled at, the kids are getting crappy leftovers, and the laundry still isn't done. So then we're going to move to then we're going to move to calling in the biggest fan. And we're going to first acknowledge what you're feeling. You're going to hit the slide again. These are all the different feelings you could be having in that moment in the car. You're feeling depressed, powerless, frustrated, insecure, guilty, defensive. You're freaking annoyed and uptight. You're moody and dissatisfied, and you're freaking uncomfortable. But you're also thankful, and you're a little hopeful. You don't really know why, but you're a little hopeful, and you're glad that you're finally home. You're glad you get to walk into see your family. You're glad you get to have an evening to yourself with your family. And so you acknowledge what you're feeling. You just label them. And then we move on to slowing down and getting into your body. And so you hop out of your car, you do some stretches there, standing on the street, you wiggle your body, you get into your body, and you recognize, okay, I'm not a machine. This is really hard. I am glad to be home, but I got to figure out a way because I still got the laundry and I still have to feed the kids. So then you're going to kindly pull back to see the big picture. And this is the biggest fan. And she's going to say, okay, it's hard to feel this exhausted and be behind all the time. No matter how organized and on top of it you are, there just isn't enough time in the day. And you're a human being, not superhuman. You can't bend the time-space continuum. So I want to pause here for a minute. I want you to reread that. And then I want you to think about how hard that is to really sink into your body, for you really to get that. I was struck with the couple that was talking before me, and they were singing the praises of how DSP had changed their lives and changed their son's lives, and they were so loving and kind and amazing. And it was a wonderful sentiment. And I'm curious how many of you people that are listening could take that in, could really let that sink in. That it gives me chills as I'm standing here, that what you are doing is changing people's lives in the little ways of doing the freaking paperwork and making sure they wear their mask and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But because we are so caught up in our brains on what's next and how do I get this and what do I got to check off the list and and surviving, that we forget to let it sink in that my work is huge and I am doing big things in little ways. So to really let that sink in. So your biggest fan goes on to say, leftovers for dinner. There's no clean underwear left, so I got to do at least one load of laundry. And I know my loving spouse is working just as hard as me, and we need to get better about communicating so everything doesn't fall on just one of us. So see it kind, wise, bigger picture, seeing a broader way of looking at it. And we can only get to that spot if we get out of our heads. If we get out of this endless to-do and we get into our bodies. Almost out of time, but I wanted to touch on, someone asked about the book. I wrote a book called The Happier Approach, and you can order it on Amazon. And that walks through this entire process. I go into the Themonger and the biggest fan and the BFF. I talk about acknowledging your feelings and give you a lot more examples of how this plays out. And I know for me, I have done this work. I have worked on inner critic and stuff for most of my professional career. And it wasn't until I started really implementing this and really trying to tap into that genuine, kind voice inside of me and get out of the drama of the biggest fan or the BFF and the Themonger that things started changing and my anxiety started decreasing. So I can't say enough positive stuff about it. This also has my website. I have a podcast where I talk about this stuff called the Happier Approach Podcast. My website has a ton of free blogs and information for you to read and get more information. And then I really encourage you, I say this after the end of every presentation, and rarely does anyone take me up on it, but for you to email me at the email there with any questions you have on this stuff, any pushback you have, any thoughts you have, any questions you have, and I will respond back to you. I'm not going to ask you to work with me or try to sell you something. It's just a conversation about mongers and BFFs and biggest fans, because this is my mission, is to spread this as much as possible. So I just want, if you, 6 months from now, a woman outside said, oh my gosh, she heard me speak before, and she was like, I need to email you. Yes, you need to email me. Email me, tell me what's going on, and we can have a conversation about it, because that's how this stuff grows and changes. Any last questions before I hop off the stage? No? Okay, great. Thank you all very much.